and Charlotte Mormon. He's a member of the exhibition committee at the Woodstock Birdcliff Guild, and he produced his Birdcliff Forum video programs, including notably its Woodstock Master Series, and he serves on the education committee of the Samuel Drosky Museum at SUNY New Paltz. Yeah.
Now I'd like to introduce the woman of the moment, Francine Tint. A New York-based painter, Francine has been a working artist since the early 1970s. Her artistic career began as a successful costume designer and fashion stylist, working with David Bowie, Ridley Scott, and the emerging ESPN network, among others. After enduring a series of personal losses, Tint's life took on a different meaning with dedication solely to painting. Impediments impede, but they also can inspire. Working as a stylist by day and a painter by night, Tint developed her own method of large-scale, color-based painting. Tint's work continues to be shown widely, both nationally and internationally. Her tireless trajectory of artistic experimentation has made her work sought after by both private collectors and institutions. She is held in the permanent collections of over 28 museums, including the Neuberger Museum of Art, the Heckscher Museum of Art, the Portland Museum of Art, among the Clement Greenberg collection, and the Krenner Art Museum, to name just a few. She continues to paint today and conducts abstract painting workshops at the Art Students League of New York. Good afternoon at 4 p.m. on Saturday, May 31st, 2025, and welcome to the Artist Talk on Art program coming from the 68th Church Street Gallery in Kingston, New York, and of course available to everyone home via Zoom. So welcome to the Zoom audience. I'm Doug Shear, an A2A co-founder in 1974 and the chairman emeritus of the board. After today's joint physical and Zoom event, this A2A copyrighted recording will be added to the YouTube channel of A2A. Later on, it will also be added to A2A's more than 1,200 other recorded programs that reside at the Archives of American Art of the Smithsonian Institution in Washington, D.C. That collection covers over 9,000 artists and other contemporary art professions. Toward the end of today's talk, the audience here and on Zoom will be invited to comment or ask questions. A couple of thoughts before we go to the keynote file and look at slides. When A2A was founded in 1974, it had been majorly inspired by two previous series. Subject of the Artist, which was run by Robert Motherwell from 1948 through 49, and the Artist Club, which ran from 1949 through 1964. Both enterprises featured artists and themes which were largely dedicated to abstract expressionism, and both featured panels and dialogues. So when A2A began, we, the three founders, myself, Bob Wiegand, and Lori Antonacci, tapped several club members to join our steering committee, among them critic Irving Sandler, publisher Cynthia Navarrete, painter Bruce Barton, and critic Corinne Robbins, who had all deep roots in the abstract expressionist art community. As a result, the first 10 or even 15 years of A2A, from its first panels in 1975 to perhaps almost 1990, were heavily representative of ABEX artists, curators, and critics, and historians. Among the hundreds of ABEXers who appeared were Milton Resnick, James Brooks, Betty Parsons, Herman Cherry, Ed Clark, Bill King, Benny Andrews, Grace Hardigan, George Sugarman, Pat Taslov, Mercedes Matter, Sidney Geist, Michael Goldberg, Jay Milder, Phil Guston. Forgive me because I want to give you a sense of the variety. Bud Hopkins, Ruben Kadish, Nell Blaine, Nick Krushnick, Greta Campbell, Larry Poons, George McNeil, Emily Mason, Philip Pavia, almost finished, Max Spoiri, Richard Stankiewicz, Phyllis Jankowski, Joan Bass, Don Holberg, Jane Freilicher, and even Ruth Klingman. Okay, that's as close as we came to Pollock. Okay. In any event, there were many, many more. So there were really hundreds of abstract expressionists in the history of ATOA, which makes today particularly meaningful to me.
Me too, but they're all.
So if we can, let's go to looking at some images of Francine's. And I'm not sure if we need to dim the lights, and we may not need that. You see? I think let's go to the next slide. Here we go. Can you tell us a little bit as we go what we're looking at? Like, maybe the time.
This was early, very early, maybe 80. And it's, yes, very large. And it's very large, which I don't know if you can always tell on the slide. It's about 260 inches long, not more. And my new work has a little bit of the feeling that and then I did many millions of works in between. It has chalk. It's pretty toned. It's kind of more tonal. And it's called Beatrice now, Sakira. Japanese type of feeling.
Next slide, please.
This was early as well. It's called Fireworks. I think it's kind of a given name. Also very large, probably 260. I'm not good with feet, but you can guess it. Or 270 long. And I worked in my bedroom, so I couldn't go too high. It's a pretty big bedroom. I wrapped it around the room and kind of slide around like a dancer or something. You can ask a question if you like in between, or it's okay.
I think let's just go and ask the questions for the later.
Sure.
Yeah. Next image.
They don't show up in the slides. This is kind of very thick. I think it's called Shadow of a Blackbird. And I'm not remembering the years, maybe 1985, earlier as well. I like to think the painting speaks for itself. I'm sort of
Next slide.
not too talking about it. This I do remember. It's called Swan's Way, and it came off of a very large painting, probably about 300 inches, and I cropped it. Actually, some of them I made screens out of too, but this was cropped, and the other one was sold. But I remember it being cropped off of a very large painting.
Next slide.
This is my neighbor's. Plus, there's a lot of drawing that I always draw, but maybe now even more with paint. It was drawn with paint and chalk. And the chalk is before and after, not a formula. Very often it's before, like pentimento. And then I just put the paint on top of it or let it shine through or show through.
Next slide.
This is in the Tampa Museum. It reminds me of something when a funny story, and I'll go back to it. I sent Clem Greenberg my slides, and he said, I don't believe in slides. I'll make an exception in your case. Because it has so much texture in it, and I see you can't really see it. Sand, maybe the kind of gold bronze has a little sand that you can see through it. This is in the permanent collection of the Tampa Museum. And it was in a show with Frank Dollar and Elaine de Kooning. So I was proud, or I'm proud.
Next image.
Yeah, little ones. See, I didn't lie. Frank and Dollar's on the right and de Kooning's on the left.
Next image.
This is homage to Artemisia. Karen Wilkins said she saw the head. It was titled afterwards. Title can be mostly afterwards. I think maybe it all speaks itself. It's
What sort of size is this?
maybe 80, 65 by I think 83 or 85.
Francine, are these acrylic or oil?
All acrylics.
Okay.
Make it look like oils. Not on purpose, but yeah.
Next image, please.
This is Voltaire in Love. Oh, thank you. Too loud. Thank you. This may have been on the back of the painting. And I left the middle, I should reveal my secrets. I left the middle kind of be bare and kind of show through, almost like a dancer or something. You know, you see it better in the real image than in real life. But I left a lot of bareness in this. Glad I remember your names. This is Woman's Soul. Yeah, and this was a collage, one of the earlier collages I did not long ago, a few years ago. It was in a show at the National Arts Club. And you could see the collage a little bit on the right side. And then I started doing collages heavier. This was kind of the start.
Next image, please.
This is what's it called?
Winter Garden.
Winter Garden. Yeah, I started leaving the bare canvas as another color. And this against the white, the canvas looks beigeier and next to the white. But there's a lot of raw canvas in this.
So without gesso, just clear.
Yeah, no gesso. I've almost never used gesso.
Next image.
And this was the start of my new works. I call them open color.
Mm-hmm.
And I looked at this for a long time. It's harder in the slide and even in person. It's got a lot of minimal and bareness to it. And I kept on looking at it and thinking I ought to do this or ought to do that or crop it because I crop paintings a lot. And I just let it be. And it's the cover of the book.
Next image, please.
And here we are. When you see the difference in color, it's right behind me. I mean, because I know them so well that I see the color is so different, and obviously you see it. You really don't get to see a lot of, now it's popping more.
And this work was all done on the wall as opposed to on
The wall. Almost all my work is on the wall.
Okay. Next slide, please.
That's center. And I turned it upside down. Not a secret, but I prefer it this way because I like the way the force of the painting, the color, of course, and the force.
Next slide, please. Is that the last image? Yes. Okay. Can we have the house lights back?
Well, the rest are in frame. In real life.
So one thought I was going to share, which I had at the end of some of my questions. A quote from Hans Hofmann. The shape doesn't make the color makes the shape.
Mm-hmm.
You definitely would agree with that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, yeah.
So you attended several art schools. One was the Brooklyn Museum School.
Yes, I did, yeah.
Nonetheless, would you consider yourself essentially a self-taught painter?
I would say mostly, and as I've said in a lot of my talks, Clement Greenberg was my mentor, so he came to my studio. Clement Greenberg. So that was like about 13 years. And different than the school, its own school. And he never said much. He would say, which painting do you like better than this painting? You know, put one up against another. The Brooklyn Museum School was a good start for me because you were able to pick the professor that you wanted, and it was a woman, Karen Strong Helios, and she painted large. I did not know it was a woman either. Mm-hmm. And so that was kind of like the first start in a way of large scale and a woman, you know, which I did not know. And it didn't matter to me. It was you pick the artists that you want to study with.
Now, given that your earlier art experiences were commercial art oriented.
Oh yeah, costume design, sure.
Were you aware of anything in art history? Were you conscious of, let's say, 20th century modernism in your design work?
Always, yeah.
So that was something that was sort of under the surface. Did that then emerge much more strongly once you started painting?
Yes.
I know that Greenberg was a major mentor to you and strongly encouraged you as a painter. And I know that you had a sort of supportive relationship with David Ebony.
Oh, yeah.
And also Robert Morgan.
Robert Morgan, yeah. He was pretty terrific. And Karen Wilkin, too. Mm-hmm. People that came to my studio for many, many years, unknown, I am, and but their eyes on it were like so good. And David Ebony and Karen Wilkin, they started getting grants, and they were good writers, very respected, and I got a bunch of grants. I would hold them.
Related to Abex inspirations, let's say, there were, in addition to Greenberg, who certainly very important, Meyer Shapiro, Howard Rosenberg, and a little bit later, Irving Sandler.
Absolutely,
you knew them or met any of them? Or Rosenberg was pretty close.
No, I knew Sandler. He lived next door to me too. In New York, he was terrific. I have this book. Meyer Shapiro was excellent. I went right into him immediately when it started really seriously painting.
Greenberg once said that Jules Olitsky, Kenneth Nolan, and Morris Lewis really only made successful paintings after Helen Frankenthaler perfected her stain process. I know that you were indebted to Helen Frankenthaler, were very interested in you.
Oh, And Oleski and Nolan. You see, Nolan's very much. I was always very, very interested in color. And I looked at the colors. So now they were called color wheel. I didn't care about the titles as much as the color.
Right. Specifically with Francine Tint, though, how do you feel that she inspired you? Because I do see that in some of your work, at least, you're using stain. This is the aspects of stain. In part because you're not sizing the canvas, so we're working on canvases on prime.
Yes.
Which she also did.
Yes. And Jackson colored first, and that's what she got.
Right. Well, she talked about her indebtedness.
Yes.
So, as she did, do you also dilute your color in order to encourage it to stay?
Yeah.
Talking about the other female FX painters, Grace Harding and Elaine Bikumi, Lee Kraz, and many others. Did they also inspire you? Were there any other female abstract painters who were inspiration?
Not as much, unfortunately. I looked at Joe Mitchell, I looked at Hardigan. Who else did you mention?
Lee Kraz.
Lee Krasner. I probably, like many others, are starting to appreciate Lee Krasner more so now, but I did look at her a lot, yeah.
On the male side of the equation, and there were a number of male abstract expressionists, beyond Larry Coons, who you normally cite, who else did you find most satisfying or inspiring among the male? Regardless of the generation.
Motherwell. Gosh, I drove Mike sometimes and ask him questions like in school.
Only do a good job.
No, I know that. Me too. Jules Orlitsky, I looked at a lot. Yeah. Give me some tips and I'll tell you,
I'll slide you if you want.
AI knew or something, right?
Many of these people we've had in the past had artists from art.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah, Litsky and Coombs, yeah.
Right.
And many of them, yeah.
How do you typically start the painting? So, for example, when I look at a lot of your work, not just the pieces in this exhibition, but the pieces in the book and the pieces in other exhibitions, you don't seem to be making a lot of preliminary marks, but you do put gestures, many gestures. In fact, I would say to call yourself a color field painter only would really be a misnomer. Yeah.
Yes.
So you're definitely colorist, but you're also definitely gestural. So describe for us, if you would, what a typical process might be, whether it's true of this show, the work of this show, or more true of your work historically. What do you do first? And
earlier works, I mixed a lot, almost like Japanese cooking, kind of, mixing a lot of colors on the floor. It's probably in the book, and then quickly getting it on the canvas. These I almost choose a color. Some are mixed and some are not, but I'll allow it to mix more on the canvas itself. This one was done on the floor, but I didn't stain it first. I just went right into the bare canvas, and it sinks in deeply. And I used dish detergent to let it seep in. And I just kind of let the colors mix themselves.
You mean one to the next?
Yeah, one's next to each other. I don't control what happens, except for the color combinations.
Right. do you tend to work? I mean, this show certainly, I look at it.
Mm-hmm.
I think, well, you must have been working on a number of these canvases simultaneously.
That's a very, very big thing with me. I am not pressured in one canvas. I work in a bedroom, a small space, but I work on maybe 5, 6 paintings at once. So I'm not just, and obviously they're not Pollock or Frankenfolder. The edge comes later, and some of the new paintings, there's no edge. I just let it breathe itself. But I work on maybe a paper piece, smaller pieces, and middle size, and maybe 2 large ones. And it's kind of like really a dance around the room. It's very, a woman in the ebony top pointed it out. It's very physical and body oriented. So yeah. But it's not just one canvas at a time.
And it looks also, at least in this show, that the color palette, the pots of paint, were the same pots of paint being used on these multiple canvases.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yes.
This is perhaps something.
It's different. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I would say also, and this is more looking at the book and looking at things that in other locations or other collections, that your work remains very consistent. The cyclicality of your work remains very consistent over time, and I'm suggesting that as a compliment, not a knock. Has that been helpful to you in your career?
I don't know what care really.
Well,
Consistent, it's true.
right. Because some dealers complain sometimes. Some critics may complain that the work of some artists is too varied, just all over the place. And, and on the other hand, there are some artists that can pull it off. Frank Stella.
I'll change every minute. Sure.
Yeah. So certain artists make a career of change.
Yes.
But the consistency that you've shown, I think, is a strength.
Thank you. But these are more of a change, and I felt that it took a little while for people, and seeing them up in a show too, because I don't have them stretched all the time, raises the consciousness of the person. And the writers came about after a few times looking at them, It was a little startling to them too, working on this scale and using the bare canvas a lot.
I've either seen that you've written about or it's been said of you that you have been meditating for 47 years, 45 years. So as someone that meditates that much, I'm really curious about what's going on in your mind when you're painting or when you're preparing to paint. Whether you're sort of psyching yourself into some place mentally, or what's happening when you're actually engaged in applying it. Talk about that. I mean.
The meditation, I feel like I'm out of the closet because I didn't show as much, and I never talked about the meditation. If people are questioning it, and I've been doing TM for all this time. I think approaching a painting is almost the same way. I don't think it's kind of like an exercise, or a dancer is a dancer if they dance. It's not anything I'm like premeditated. When I sit down to meditate, I just don't think of clearing my mind or doing this or doing that. I kind of just do it.
Right. You say that once you get engaged in the canvas of a group of kids, that you get into something trance-like, something.
Yeah, a zone. I do.
Zone.
Yes. And it can be like meditation. It's not, but it's a zone kind of primordial type feel. I mean, I've noticed some marks that I've seen in cave paintings, that somebody had done so long ago. And I say, oh my God, it's the same hand, it's just like that way, continue.
Are you mentioning that by way of appropriation? I'm kidding you now.
Appropriation. A lot.
You also have spoken of your fondness of jazz. I happen to see real parallels between what goes on with jazz musicians and the improvisation,
Yeah.
the riffs that different musicians get into, either within one piece or just generally in their body of work. That reminds me a lot of abstract expression.
Yes, very much, yeah. I mean, we know what we're doing, but then we kind of go away from it, it's not like you don't know. And you haven't looked or you haven't studied. It doesn't even have to be a school, because I was working, but you have to look in order to really know. And it would be like something on a song or something, you'll start with something specific, not always, Miles didn't do that all the time, but then you'll kind of just go on your own riff. She was married to a jazz person, she'll say it better. And then you come back.
So the beginnings, at least, of the abstract expression, you see, were very much a male-dominated, as you put it, and I agree, it's a good choice of words, boys' club.
Yeah.
And, it's interesting that at the same time that the first generation of abstract expressions were even the second, the beginnings of ABEX, at the point that era was already losing some of its strength. Certainly, ABEX has not gone away by any way, and it's still attracting young people to its.
Always.
But it seems that at the point that by the 1960s, even before you picked up a paintbrush, would have started
50s, yeah.
That the 40s and 50s had passed, and in the beginnings of artist talk and art, for example, the ABEX artists who were appearing were already coming up against pop art, conceptual art, performance, earthworks, etc. Body art. There were a lot of things that were distracting the art buyers and exhibitors from ABEX. Nonetheless, ABEX has held on tremendously.
Yes.
It's now at something like 85 years. As the new, let's say, the New York School, it has tremendous staying power.
It does. Strong. It does. Yeah. It didn't have color that the next generation did in the 60s. That's what they really came strong on.
You mean color painting?
Yeah. The graphics did the same. Yeah.
I think it'd be interesting to go to the audience and allow some questions and comments. And we could start with people in the room, and we'll see if anyone on the Zoom would also like to say anything. So don't be patient. Go ahead, Gina.
Francine, I was wondering those early paintings.
A little bit louder so that we can pick it up.
The early paintings that you said were 260.
Yeah.
I guess I really relate to the reference to the body and dance, but
I saw that in you too.
but I'm just wondering that extreme horizontality, was it due to your bedroom?
Yeah, my bedroom.
Just because in a funny way it feels like
Adversity.
Thanks.
I see a lot of green and red.
In these, yeah.
Are those your favorite colors? Or?
Just this time. I mean, all colors are my favorite. And a show has to hang together, too. That's very, very important, and I did learn them from Tom Greenberg, and then everybody loves to hate me. And he always said, the show, when he would look at the work before the show, he would say, gee, that's great, but it won't work with the paintings, like another piece. So it's not so much the color coordinate, but it's a recent period in the more recent paintings.
If you had lived in the Upper West Side in one of those apartments where all the rooms are all along the hallway, you would have done some enormous work.
I did it here too, though.
Someone else?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
There's a video that people become their names as an amazing colorist whose last name is Tint. Do you think your name influenced your fate?
My fate, yeah.
Fate as an artist?
Yeah, well, I was married. I never changed my name either. Tint, yeah, I guess the color is fake, really. Everything is.
Go ahead.
This is probably a naive question, but how do you actually apply this paint?
Well, in these, I almost let the paint apply itself. I don't
you have a brush or
I can use a brush, and these are a lot of pores.
they are
And a brush too. Yeah. And this is more explosive one, but then there's a brush on the side.
well, you just have it like this is a very technical.
No, that's fine.
Do you have like a can of a certain size that you use to?
I have a kitty litter box. Like which is large to get a brush in there. I started with one, but now I have many. And then I use almost anything, a mop, like Turner, and a brush. I remember seeing pictures of Turner, who was very small, standing on a box using a mop to paint. Is fabulous. That is another influence to me. I don't always think of it right away. Painted light.
Mhm. Can we tell if there are any questions? Let's go to you, and then I want to see if anyone on the Zoom has any.
How would you describe the development of your work over time?
I think now even in dark colors, this is more summer colors. I have these in dark too. I think they were more awesome, heavily painted rather than this. And I did use the bare canvas, which comes as a white color, maybe got more connected to Matisse. I don't know. Maybe describing with the earlier period. I think it just got lighter.
Do you guys have anybody on the Zoom that?
Somebody's got a question.
Oh, okay.
I have a question that is kind of related to the first question that was asked, and I don't quite know how to say it, but I was very struck by your description of making a piece that's like larger than the space that you're working in. And I'm curious, like looking around at the work, it feels like very spatial. And
I know.
This one behind kind of feels like forest, like with all this depth. And
Yeah.
I'm just really curious, like if you have anything else to say about the relationship between the space you're working in and the work. Like I wonder if it's kind of fun for you to like, a lot of people would make small work in the small.
I know, it's another adversity, but I wound up, going the opposite way. One of the earlier paintings, I just wrapped it around the room. I gave up a closet, you name it. And I just wrapped it all around the room, kind of danced around the room. Yes, I think somebody would do smaller paintings, But what was interesting, I had a very large studio once across the street, very short time. It was like 4,000 square feet. And I remember I went back into my bedroom, and Larry Coons, at the risk of saying it, he said, do the same thing in your small studio. Make sure you just stretch out your arm, So I took the space into my little space, the space in your head, you know? That's where the space usually is.
Good.
You haven't said anything, you have these sculptures, you here in the gallery.
Yes.
You mentioned how you're involved with figure, but that doesn't appear, I was thinking de Kooning, you know, or he de Kooning went back and put figures in.
Yeah.
You keep it separate, but the figures seem very important. So,
They have been, yes, and I started them a little later, along with drawing and from the model, you know, from the live model completely. I don't know, I just, I was wrong. I mean, it's Alan done it. I don't do it very much now, but they've been very much a part of me and a part of my work and how I approach it and how I approach it with life, you know, from the live model, never from the photo. Yeah, they've been there and important and ignored. Well, I believe it, so therefore.
Anybody in the Zoom, can you tell if there's anyone in Zoom, either in chat or that wants to ask a question?
I'm seeing no one.
Okay. Go ahead.
I have a question, sorry, but it's David in Secretary College, and you know the link to the colleagues. My question is, how did you know when you transitioned from your bronze sculptures to this new phase of a medium, that was the right thing for you to do? Like, in the sense that, it was amazing, but in the sense that you felt confident enough that this was part of your life, and now it's time for a new.
I did it all simultaneously. I always loved the figure, and it even comes in the work a lot, but it wasn't transitioning at all. They were simultaneous.
This would be a moment where I could thank a few people, so let me do that before I forget it. Obviously, I would like to thank Francine Tint and her assistant, Beatrice Caprioli. Alan Goldman and his colleagues at the 60 and Prince Gallery. A local crew of David Golden and Maheo Amos. Our own AQA programmers and communications crew, our board of directors, and our new president, Jenny Wang. And thank you to our gallery audience, thank you for being here. And to those joining us on the Zoom call. And a reminder that there are hundreds of A2A recordings available on our YouTube channel. I think there's about 140 of them. And also at Archives of American Art that are accessible by contacting them. You'll find that link to our specific part of the Archives of Archive on our website, which is a2anyc.org. Again, thank you all for coming.